Okay, let's start with our motivation. And so when it snows, we can think there's lots of chenrezis or lots of vajrasattvas showering down on us, absorbing into us. So there's infinite Buddhas, infinite bodhisattvas, or should I say countless Buddhas and countless bodhisattvas. And similarly, there's countless sentient beings. So somehow our job is to connect the sentient beings and the Buddhas and bodhisattvas in such a way that the sentient beings can receive the teachings of the three jewels, and then through practicing them become those three jewels. So in short, our job is to connect sentient beings to the causal refuge, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha that exist externally to us, so that by practicing the path, they can become the resultant three jewels. Their mind becoming the Dharma, they becoming the Sangha when they attain the path of seeing, and then the Buddha on the path of no more learning. And so what motivates us to connect the sentient beings and the three jewels is, of course, compassion. So compassion isn't mushy. There's definitely an emotional side to it, but it's not a mushy emotional side. It's not an irrational, ignorant kind of emotion. But it's based on understanding why sentient beings are lovable, why they deserve to have happiness and be free of suffering. So we really have to use some kind of reasoning process, maybe not syllogisms, maybe syllogisms in some cases, to overcome our wrong conceptions about sentient beings, such as thinking that there's inherently evil, inherently corrupt sentient beings, such as thinking that we're more important than others. Such as thinking that if we benefit sentient beings, if we give them something, then it's taking something away from ourselves. So this sense of poverty or loss when we think about benefiting others. So there's all sorts of these kind of stuck places inside of us that we need to discover and then apply the antidotes to. And for that reason, we're listening to the teachings this evening. So this part about the causal and resultant refuge is quite interesting. Because in Gyulama Uttar Tantra, Maitreya made the connection that for bodhisattvas, their principal resultant refuge object is all three jewels, because they want to become the Buddha, so they have to actualize and themselves become all three jewels. But for solitary realizers, or people put it this way, who have the disposition to follow the solitary realizer path, they're very interested in dependent origination, the 12 links. And so they're very inclined to meditate on that. And so they're kind of, I should say, final, causal and final refuge. Anyway, their final refuge would be the Dharma jewel. Yeah. And then for those who have the tendency towards the Shravaka or hearer path, then they're very interested in the Four Truths and want to practice those, become an arhat, and so their kind of resultant final refuge object is the Sangha, because the Sangha is what teaches the Four Truths and practices them together. Solitary realizers, it makes sense that it's the Dharma jewel, because you don't have to involve the community so much there. But for bodhisattvas, they say it's actually all three jewels, not just the Buddha jewel, but for all of them. Anyway, that's just a little bit of an aside. So if we go back to Gomchen Lamrim, last week we had started on the section about insight, and we were talking about the root of samsara and how the view of the personal identity, is it's also an ignorance. And it's an ignorance that grasps at the self of persons. Okay, so I'll just read the paragraph where we stopped last week and then continue. For that reason, neither of these is the simple imputation of self. So here they're talking about neither of these probably being, neither the innate self-grasping or the artificial or acquired self-grasping. Okay, so for that reason, neither of these is the simple imputation of the self to be permanent, unitary, or independent, or of the perceived and the perceiver as having a distinct subdistance, which would be the Chittamatra view, as imputed by false reasoning. The permanent partless or permanent unitary independent one is the non-Buddhist idea of soul. And then the perceived and perceiver having distinct substance, that's the Chittamatra view of that the perceiving consciousness and the perceived object are, separate substances. They don't come from the same latency on the mind. And those born as animals over many eons also have them. So it's not the acquired and the innate. It's got to be the innate self-grasping of person, innate self-grasping of phenomena. Okay. Hence, they are known as innate self-grasping. The view of the personal identity is the root of samsara, and grasping at the aggregate's true existence is the root of samsara. If you ask, doesn't that make two distinct roots of samsara? Seems like they're saying there's two. No. So the answer is that the latter, the self-grasping of phenomena, is the cause, and the former is its result. Okay, so although their objects are distinct, they share the same mode of apprehension, which means they both apprehend objects as truly existent or inherently existent. So the fault that you raise does not affect me, the fault of saying that they're two separate things, two separate roots. It is the same for two successive moments of ignorance, for example, which according to your system should be seen as distinct roots of samsara. You know, like moment A of ignorance and moment B of ignorance must be two distinct roots of samsara, you know, because grasping it as inherently existent, you know, even grasping the root of samsara as inherently existent. Since the view of the personal identity is considered to be both ignorance and grasping it to existence, there is no fault. Okay, so it's saying they both apprehend their objects in the same way, even though their objects are different ones. The apprehending the aggregates, specifically all phenomena, but persons in general, and the other one is apprehending the person, okay, as inherently existent. Okay, when ignorance holds an object to exist truly, and the object in question does not coincide with your way of thinking, what happens in our mind? Anger arises in relationship to it, because we're making this object or situation so firm and strong and concrete, and then it doesn't please us, so then we got to get angry and do something about it. Okay, so our afflictive mind thinks. When the object coincides with your way of thinking, attachment appears. Oh, there's something beautiful. You know, the best thing is always going to be like this. It's always going to bring me happiness. This is it. You know, like the chocolate cake for lunch today. Yeah. When you looked at that chocolate cake, did you think, there's happiness inside this? It's not just chocolate cake, but it was chocolate frosting, too. Yeah, my arteries started to ache looking at it, so I didn't need any. But normally, you look at it, it's like, there's happiness inside, so I better put that happiness inside me. That's because the object appears so strongly to us as being from its own side, that wonderful. Okay. Of course, if it were that wonderful, then everybody should see it that way. Yeah, but it doesn't happen. When neutral, neither of the two arises, but another moment of ignorance does. The way the rest of the afflictions arises, is explained in the intermediate being's path. So there's one way that Vasubandhu talks about the order in which they arise, and another way in which I think it's Asanga talks about the order. And they're quite different. Okay, so now, next subject. Why is it necessary to seek the view, realizing selflessness, if you wish to reject this ignorance? Okay, so, if ignorance is the root of samsara, why do we need to realize selflessness to get rid of it? Yeah. Since it is said that if you perceive the selflessness of the object, you neutralize the seed of cyclic existence. If you properly refute the object as it is perceived by self-grasping, just as cutting the root of a tree destroys its branches and leaves, you neutralize all faults, the afflictions. Okay, so it's like knapweed. Those of you who are here for winter retreat, you've got to come back in the summer. Then you'll know what I'm talking about. Now, I'm sorry, you may not understand the example. But knapweed is a noxious weed that we have plenty of. And, it grows, and it starts out just one little seed. but then it comes back each year, and it can, it strengthens each year it comes back. And it has flowers with little seed pods, and each seed pod contains 900 seeds, not 899 and not 901, but 900 approximately seeds. Okay, so when you're picking your knapweed, if you're not being careful, you just pull it and it breaks off at the bottom part of the stem, and the roots are still in the ground. So it looks like you've pulled it off, but what you've only pulled off is the flowers and the seed pods. Okay, and you've got to get it actually before the flowers fall off, because otherwise you move it and you're opening the seed pods, which is worse. So you have to be very careful when you're pulling the knapweed to really get the roots out. Yeah, if the ground, if it hasn't rained for a while, it usually breaks off. So the optimum time for pulling knapweed is when the ground is wet. Okay? So it's really a very good example when you're out there pulling it, because sometimes, you just like, I want to get this area done already because, you've been pulling for half an hour and you've gotten this much done. I want to finish and get something done. And so the thing is, it's tempting to skip over it. Or when you're walking on the path, there's just one plant there. It's only one. I won't stop and pull it. Yeah. But the thing is, each pod has those 900 seeds. Yeah. So the moment you space out and the moment you get lazy, what's happening is proliferation of knapweed, okay? Because it's just going to go to seed and proliferate. So it's very much like our mind, If we don't pull out the root of samsara and, completely extirpate this self-grasping ignorance, then it's like just breaking the plant off. At the bottom of the stem, it's going to come back and it's going to be better rooted next year because, it's been in the ground for 2 years. And, if you have a little bout of anger or a little bout of jealousy or whatever it is, and you just want to ignore it, it's not so much. That's like walking past the plant. You're too lazy to do something, and it just looks little and insignificant. But then the same thing happens is, it's just there, and it still has all these seeds, and it just proliferates and becomes stronger too. So it's quite a good exercise going to pull knapweed, because it really reminds you in your practice to take care of even small afflictions, and to, as much as you can, try and put energy into uprooting them. Okay? Because if you uproot the knapweed, then, the stalks die, the leaves die, the flowers die, the pods die. Actually, if you pull it up really late, the pods don't die. You have to take them and put them in a plastic bag, because if it's already gone to seed, somehow the plant, seed, it has enough energy, it's going to keep producing. So it's hard to get rid of, okay, but definitely worthwhile. Okay, now this moved. Okay. Therefore, if you disregard the path that opposes the mode of apprehension of the root of samsara, innate self-grasping, no other path will be able to eradicate the seed of the view of self. Okay, so, here's the self-grasping ignorance. If you don't practice the path that realizes the opposite of what this ignorance apprehends, then there's no other path to take. Yeah. So it's either you pull the knapweed up, from the root, and if you don't do that, what else are you going to do? Or we could say, well, you could spray it. But, let's forget that. Yeah. It's like you have to get it, you have to kill it, basically. Kind of planting roses in the same place where knapweed is not necessarily going to kill the knapweed. Okay? So we really have to uproot the, this self-grasping ignorance, not just create virtuous karma. Virtuous karma is like planting the roses and the daisies, but you still have the knapweed there. Okay? With the mind engaging in the two kinds of selflessness of persons and phenomena, it is not possible to talk without a mind engaging in the two kinds of selflessness. It is not possible to talk of realizing selflessness as rejecting self-grasping is unlike extracting a thorn. Maybe because a thorn comes out physically.
It's the opposite. A thorn you can pull out, but you have to realize from the inside out. So language isn't right with the image.
Yeah. But a thorn is just a physical thing. So you can't do something physical, or you can't do something, one big yank and get the whole thing out. Okay. Now the thing is, why does realizing selflessness or emptiness overcome the self-grasping of ignorance? Okay, why? How does that work? We always hear that. Realize emptiness, that will cut the root of samsara. Why?
Because you're replacing the one with its opposite view.
Okay, expand on that. What do you mean?
Microphone, please.
You're replacing with an opposite view in the way that the view of selflessness is direct opposite of the view of self-grasping, and it has a valid basis because it's how things do exist.
Yeah. Okay. So the self-grasping is holding things to exist inherently. Yeah. Things do not exist that way. Yeah. And this is why we're learning syllogisms and all this stuff to prove to ourselves that things do not exist inherently, even though they appear that way to our mind and our senses. Yeah. So we have to see that how things appear and how we grasp them or, to exist is not how they actually exist. So whereas we grasp them to exist inherently, they are empty of inherent existence. So that's why if you realize emptiness, since it's the opposite of inherent existence, the mind apprehending emptiness is going to overcome the mind apprehending inherent existence. Okay? So that's why we have to really be certain that things are empty, because the appearance to us is so strong, that we don't even recognize it as an appearance. Okay? Like looking around here. Okay? Yeah? Doesn't everything look to you like it's outside of yourself? Yeah? And when you look at everything, doesn't this look like it's a lamp from its own side? This is a lamp, this is a cup, this is a striker, a clock, a gong, a recorder, a table. Yeah, everything looks like that's what it is out there. And we feel like we're just coming along and seeing some kind of pre-existent objective world out there. Yeah. So we think even our process of perception is there's some kind of consciousness in here, which is really a consciousness. And it's just kind of hanging out, waiting to perceive something, And then there's some object out here that exists as, the computer, the table, or the paper, whatever it is, and it's waiting to be perceived. And then we have our eye faculty, that connects the two. But the eye faculty also, it's just hanging out there as an eye faculty, kind of waiting for an object to come along and for there to be a previous moment of consciousness. And then we think, they all kind of get connected. And then we see this thing. And what we see is actually what exists out there. Yeah, doesn't it seem that way? Yeah. I mean, when you look, doesn't this look, this is Gomchen, isn't it? And that's Semke. When you look at them, that's not Semke, and that's not Gomchen. When you look at them, it's like, okay, that's who this person is. They have some kind of identity. Yeah. And okay, you might have called them Ruby and Nancy before, but, that doesn't matter. We know who they really are. Yeah. So, that's how things appear to us. And we just say, oh, yeah, that's really how they are. That's really how they are. Yeah? And so, when Karuna is in a bad mood and she goes like this, if we see her, it's like, what a nasty cat. Yeah? And out there, objective, Then mudita, she doesn't just go like that. She goes like that. Oh, too nasty cat. Out there, unrelated to me as the perceiver. Unrelated to me. Yeah? Okay. But is that who they really are? Yeah. Are they nasty cats? They're adorable. We love them to bits, don't we? Yeah, especially when Karuna's lying on top of the heating vent. Isn't that so cute? And Mudita, when she's in her basket and just stretched out, so cute. You're even developing a liking for her. Yeah? Okay? So we think this is really how they are, how they exist. And it's not. It's not. Because depending what mood you catch either of the cats in, you're going to have a totally different idea of who they are, Because one moment of what they did in one moment of their life is going to determine your opinion of their entire life. Yeah? And we do that with people, too. I saw that one time when I was, I can tell stories again. I was working with a friend who was a conflict mediator, and we were going to a meeting of my teacher's international organization. And we thought that it would be really interesting to have like a workshop about conflict resolution and these kinds of things. And we called the man who was organizing the thing, and he gave us a slot, and we got there, and it was all fine. And I was really excited about this because I thought, wow, I had found studying conflict resolution so helpful, and now we get to share it with these people. It really benefit. And then, like a few hours before our seminar was planned, the guy who organized it said, sorry, there's no time, it's canceled. You mean, of course, I'm nice and polite. I'm Susie Cream Cheese. Yeah. But inside, you mean we came all the way here trusting you when you said we could do this workshop, and now you're canceling it at the last minute without giving us any say in what's happening? You know? So I developed, a nice, strong grudge against this guy, okay, who happened to be the head of the organization. Yeah, really good to have a grudge against the head of the organization. That really helps, doesn't it? So a few years went by, and of course every time I saw him, it was like, yeah. And then one time, we were Vajrapani and by Lama's stupa, and Rinpoche was doing something, and I was there, and then, he came too. And then all of a sudden, it just kind of hit me. Like, you must have been, I don't know, maybe 45, 47 at that time. And I realized, in my mind, the whole value of his life was that 3-minute exchange when he canceled our seminar. Because I had not had very much contact with him before or afterwards. Always, we knew who we were. Hello, goodbye. But I thought his whole life, my whole opinion, the value of this sentient being's life was based on 3 minutes. Yeah? And this is very much how we look at people who are incarcerated. Yeah, they do some action that maybe takes 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. We think that is the sum value of their life. They aren't worth anything more than that. Yeah, like this kid who shot up at the school. Everybody's image of him is just, this is the devil, as if that's the entirety of all 19 years of his life. Yeah. So this is what grasping at inherent existence does. It makes our mind extremely rigid. Yeah, very rigid, unable to think that things could not be as they appear to our senses, and unable to think that they could not be as our judgmental, critical mind thinks they are. Yeah? So the mind gets so rigid, so inflexible. Yeah? And so stubborn, don't we? Somebody comes along and tries to show us another side of the situation or another side of the person, and it's, no, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to even hear it. And this is how polarized the country is right now. Yeah, I don't want to hear anything because I wouldn't know what these guys are like already. Yeah, this all comes out of grasping at inherent existence. Okay, so does this give you some idea why that ignorance is a problem? Yeah, because otherwise it's, we say, we do the emptiness meditation and we say, yeah, you can't, the person's not one with the aggregate, it's not separate with the aggregate. So what? That doesn't change anything. Yeah, well, that's because we really haven't understood what ignorance is and how things appear to us and how we grasp them, and then what happens as a result of that. Yeah. So same thing with attachment. Yeah. We see, falling in love, I think, is the greatest example of that. Everybody's fallen in love, right? Yeah, fallen in love. Okay. Somebody pointed out to me that when we talk about love, it's like falling, as if you have no control. You fell and went kerplunk, you know? Yeah. Okay. But here's this person, and then all of a sudden, it's like they are faultless. Yeah. When you first meet them, remember? Yeah. Totally no faults. Completely wonderful. Yeah. And so, they're the key to my happiness. And if I'm with them, I'm going to live happily ever after. Yeah. Now, it doesn't matter that that's what my parents thought when they fell in love, and look at them now. But somehow my relationship is going to be different. Yeah. And this person, for sure. And then, so we get really attached. Then what happens when we get attached? Okay. Then, even if the person is doing something that is not so good, we rationalize it and we justify it. Yeah. They're drinking a lot. They're smoking dope a lot, whatever it is they're doing. Oh, they don't have a substance abuse problem. Yeah. You find little traces around the house or on their cell phone that they're having an affair. No, it's just that's a colleague. That was an advertisement, or, so we completely, when there's attachment, we completely remake the person, into what we want them to be. Yeah. And then commit a lot of negativities to maintain that fantasy until at some point it becomes intolerable. Yeah? And then you have a fight. And so it's amazing how this person who was 100% good, yeah, in the matter of, 5 minutes became 100% bad. Yeah, and worthy of my anger, no longer worthy of being having happiness and its causes, but worthy of my anger. Yeah, and my anger is what's going to change them and make them be nice to me. Isn't it? The more I'm angry, the more they're going to feel bad and be nice to me. Right? That's what we think, isn't it? Yeah. The more I'm angry, the more I let it out, yeah, the happier I'm going to be. And the more unhappy he's going to be, but then he'll feel so guilty that then he'll start being nice to me. Perfectly logical and reasonable, isn't it? And this is what we do. Yeah. Or if you're not the explosive type, when your object of attachment doesn't meet up with what you want them to do, then you yeah, until then they feel really bad and they decide they better be nice to you. Okay. Okay, so this all comes from grasping at inherent existence, and not, getting these incredible, solid, inflexible views of somebody else. Yeah, that's all they are. That's all they ever have been. Donald Trump, when he came out of his mother's womb, he was already a catastrophe. From the moment he took his first breath, he was, out of control. Yeah. So that's how we see them, other people. Yeah. Okay. So it gets kind of fatiguing, but it doesn't it? When you really look at it, how we live our lives again and again and again, we do the same stupid things, trying to be happy, but we don't get tired of it. Yeah. Oh, we haven't done that for this retreat yet. What we do sometimes for retreats, because very often in retreats, what people do is you ruminate on a problem that's your own problem. Yeah, anybody here been ruminating on a problem? Kathleen? Zofa? Yeah. Yeah, you had an expression on your face like, yeah.
My asthma, I'm just totally ruminating on asthma.
Oh, that must be fun. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just so interesting.
Yeah. Because it's my asthma. Yeah. Do you think about Maitri's asthma?
I actually did when I heard her sounding sick. I sound like Maitri. But I didn't have compassion for it.
Yeah.
I just thought, oh, I sound like a cat.
So, yeah. So usually during a retreat, everybody has some problem that they are ruminating on. And you come back to it, kind of, not necessarily every session, but, every other session, every third session, Yeah. And you ruminate, and you can't figure it out, and you look at it this way and that way and the other way, and, you get frustrated and everything like that. But somehow, and we think about it a bazillion times, but we never get tired of thinking about it. Yeah. So what I've had people do in previous retreats is write their problem on a sheet of paper, and then you put it in a pot, and everybody draws out a problem that isn't theirs. And then in your meditation, when you start to ruminate on your problem, as soon as you catch it, you stop and you ruminate on the other person's problem. Yeah. And it's amazing when you do this how boring their problem is. Yeah. It's like my problem was so interesting. And their problem is so boring. It's like, get over it already. Why are you ruminating on this during a retreat? Yeah. Yeah. It's very difficult to ruminate on somebody else's problem. Yeah. Not nearly as interesting as ours, So this has something to do with grasping at inherent existence. Reifying something, reifying the I, reifying the mine. As soon as it is my problem, then it is like of, immense importance, without a doubt, worth ruminating on, worth being obsessed about. Somebody else's problem? Somebody, I won't say who, wrote me a problem they were having, and I wrote back and I said, Jan, can't you think of something else more interesting to be obsessed about? Because it was I was like, really? That's the last thing I would choose to ruminate on. Anyway, okay. But you see, it all comes from whatever our mind latches onto, and sees it. This is really this way. It doesn't just appear this way. It exists in that way. Yeah. And it exists in that way, and that is absolutely intolerable. Okay? So intolerable. Yeah. Somebody put the spatulas in the wrong, what do you call it? No, canister has a top. Bin? No, bin is bigger. Container. They put, yeah, they put the spatula in the wrong container, and we saw that just before we came into the hall, and it's like, oh my God, who put that spatula there? How could they do it? It doesn't belong there. I can't stand it there for one more minute. And you want to get up off your seat and go into the kitchen and put the spatula where it belongs. Yeah?
It's happened.
Yeah, I know. It's happened. Yeah. Do you ever get that in your body? Something that you've been thinking about is so intolerable that you have to get up right then and there and fix it. Yeah. Can't wait. What? What?
I'm too lazy.
But, just, this squeezing tight mind. And somebody else comes along and says, who cares where they put the spatula? What difference does it make where somebody put it doesn't go there. The kitchen needs to be organized according to the way I think it should be organized. That's the subtext, And it doesn't belong there, it belongs here. And the world is not going to survive unless that spatula gets moved. Yeah? Yeah. Sometimes our mind gets so tight. Yeah. Or it's like you thinking about something somebody said or something, and you get yourself so worked up. It's like, okay, I got to stop my session right now and call them or email them or text them. It's like, I've got to tell them right this very minute. Yeah. And you feel it in your body. Yeah? You've done that. It's like, I cannot sit here any longer. I've got to do something about this. Yeah? And it's all a creation of our mind. Yeah? You're so worried about the spatula. You get up, you stomp out of the hall, you slam the door. Go into the kitchen, move the spatula back. Yeah. Come back into the hall to finish your session. Isn't what?
You go back and somebody has moved that spatula.
Yeah. Oh, right. Isn't that the worst part? It wasn't just that some idiot who doesn't know where it belongs put it in the wrong container. It's someone who has the wrong conception and thinks they know what the right container is. So even after I moved it to the right container, they take the spatula out and move it back to the wrong container. Yeah. So theirs wasn't just an innocent mistake. They're stupid. Yeah. And they're doing it deliberately. Yeah, they're doing it deliberately to make me mad. Yeah, I know it. I know it. Yeah. So I'm going to hide out in the kitchen in a corner and wait till I see who comes in and moves that spatula. And I'm going to catch them in the middle of it. Yeah. Okay. Huh? Yeah, okay. So, why is it necessary to seek the view realizing selflessness if you wish to reject this ignorance? This is the reason why, okay? Because look what it makes us do. Okay, in brief, by understanding and meditating on the lack of true existence, grasping at true existence is overcome. The wrong thinking, that is distorted attention, which we also decided to call distorted conception, didn't we? This one, yeah? But we settled on distorted attention? Okay. Oh, yeah, because before it was inappropriate attention. So distorted attention. Sometimes I do put distorted conception too. Wrong. Okay. So the grasping at true existence gives rise to this distorted attention. So when you cut the root of the ignorance grasping true existence, then the distorted attention is thereby overcome. By overcoming it, attachment and so forth that are rooted in the view of the self are overcome. Then the karmas that they inspire are overcome. Without karma, you are no longer obliged to be born in samsara and are certain to attain liberation. Okay, so there's a causal sequence here. Okay? There's the grasping at true existence, yeah, which is reifying the object. And it gives rise to the distorted attention that exaggerates either the good qualities or bad qualities, or projects good qualities and bad qualities that aren't there. That's the job of the distorted attention. And then that gives rise to different afflictions, like attachment and anger and jealousy and arrogance and so on. The afflictions motivate the actions, the karma, and then the karma is what leads to the result of dukkha and samsara. So this is a whole long causal thing, beginning with ignorance and ending with dukkha. Or if you're going to do it in the 12 links, ending with aging and death. Now, hold on. So if you cut the first one, the grasping at true existence, then the distorted attention also crumbles. Okay, so it's like you uproot the knapweed, then the stem dies. Okay, then the afflictions stop. Yeah, and then I said the distorted attention, then the afflictions, and then the actions, and then the dukkha. Yeah, so they all kind of, it's like dominoes, you know? Okay. Yeah, the country used to believe in the domino theory. Remember fighting the commies? Yeah, one country goes and then they were all going to go clunk, 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 clunk. Yeah, that was wrong. Yeah, but this one is really like the dominoes, If you cut one, then they all kind of go clunking.
I was thinking about this from that night we talked about the syllogism that you told me to meditate on, the one about the being in the desire realm is subject to death because they are under the control of ignorance, afflictions, and karma. And so I had to really think about that for a while. And then this has led me to this question of then in one of your first book in the series, you talk about the 5 aggregates being the cause of death. The cause of death. So you could say here then, like, this is how we get the 5 aggregates through this process. of the 12 links is how we attain the 5 aggregates, and that leads to death. But to say it causes death, you couldn't say it was like the substantial cause of the body, but it is a cause in the sense of.
Are you sure it said the 5 aggregates are the cause of death?
Oh, I can look it up here. I have it on here. I'll look it up.
Yeah, maybe check it, because I mean, if it did say that, what it means is there wouldn't be death if you didn't have the 5 aggregates. So in that way, it wouldn't be the substantial cause, but it would certainly be a condition for death. Yeah. In the same way that, Shantideva says, when somebody strikes us and we experience pain, we should say to ourselves, if I hadn't taken this body under the force of ignorance, then I wouldn't be experiencing this pain. So I can't really blame it on the other person, because he may have struck me, but I'm the one who supplied the body. Yeah. So that same way of, being a condition for it to be there. Okay, I'm going to go on. Okay. So ascertaining the selflessness of phenomena on the base of images in a mirror is easy. On the basis of other objects, it is not. Similarly, realizing the lack of an intrinsic nature on the basis of the person is easy. On the basis of other phenomena, it is not. As in the case of similes, it depends on the base. For this reason, according to the order of which is easier, in this way, when you have realized the person's lack of inherent nature, apply that knowledge accordingly to all other phenomena. Thus it is explained, making the order of meditation certain. Okay, so what it's talking about here is when we talk about emptiness, we often use the analogy of seeing a face in the mirror, okay? Because when we look in the mirror, there appears to be a person in the mirror, okay? It's very vivid. It's very clear, yeah? If you're a baby, you think there's another baby in the mirror, and you reach out to touch it. Just the way the kittens do. They think there's another kitten, and they reach out to play with the kitten in the mirror. So that analogy is used in the sense of, there's an appearance, but the appearance is false. In the same way that things appear to our senses to exist inherently, but that appearance is also false. Yeah. The appearance of the face in the mirror is something that arose depending on many factors. You have to have the mirror, the face, the light being at a certain angle, and then you have the appearance of the face in the mirror. In the same way, you have the appearance of the person that depends on many, many factors. Okay? But the appearance of the person is inherently existent is wrong. Yeah, it's mistaken, because actually the person is a dependent arising, in the same way that the appearance of the face in the mirror is mistaken, because there's just an appearance that is also a dependent arising. Okay? So it's easy to see the falseness of the face in the mirror. It's more difficult to see the, when we're actually grasping things as inherently existent. Yeah, and to see the mistakenness in that approach. Okay? So we can see there's not a real face in the mirror, but when we're sitting here looking at each other, oh, there's a real person here that I'm looking at. Yeah, that's more difficult to realize. Okay, so in the same way, when we are meditating on emptiness, we have the meditate the selflessness of person and the selflessness of phenomena, it's much easier to meditate to realize the selflessness of persons than it is to realize the selflessness of phenomena. Okay, why? Because the person already we know. This is what they say. Okay. Check out if this works, if this describes you or not. But what they say is that we know that we can't really identify the person without identifying their body or their speech or maybe their mind if we're clairvoyant. Okay? So we never really see a person without seeing the body, speech, and mind, some identifying characteristic. So because that is the case, therefore, it's easier to see that the person is dependent on other things. And so for that reason, it's easier to realize that it's empty. Okay. Whereas when we look at the cup, we just say cup and it's out here. Okay. But when I say Venerable Samten, it's like, oh, I see her body, so, oh, Venerable Samten. Or I hear her mind. Or I see her handwriting.
I hope you don't hear my mind.
No, I hear your speech. Yeah. I don't know your mind. I know your handwriting. Okay, so in that way, it's easier to see the person is dependent, whereas external phenomena, it's harder. So they say. But that always makes me have questions, because when they give you the example of how to meditate on the selflessness of person, they give the example of, in ancient times, a chariot, in modern times, a car. And they use that as the example to understand the selflessness of persons. But that example is a phenomena which is supposedly more difficult to understand than the selfless person. Don't ask me. Put that on the list to ask Geshe-la, okay? I don't know the answer to that one. Yeah?
I believe that story with the cart refers to the person, and how the person is easier to recognize as not existing than the aggregates. And so
as not inherently existent.
Yeah, the inherently existent person is easier to realize than phenomena, because it takes apart the cart, but it doesn't talk about how the wheels aren't inherently existent in all the parts. It's saying that this label chariot is being imputed on this, and it's an example of how the self is imputed on the aggregates. That's, I think, why they use that.
Yeah, but supposedly, the example is supposed to be easier to understand than the actual thing, but they also say it's harder to realize the selflessness of phenomena than it is to realize the selflessness of persons. So that's why I'm saying it's, I understand. For me, the example is very clear. Meditating on persons is more difficult, but then I don't understand why they say realizing, because the example is supposed to be easier to understand than the actual thing.
The way I've heard it explained is that phenomena there is specifically referring to the aggregates.
Which phenomena?
So the self of person is easier, or the selflessness of person is easier to realize than the selflessness of phenomena, right. Meaning your aggregates.
Yes.
And a chariot we can look at and sort of dissect, or we can even know about the parts. So that's even easier than the person. So it's like a succession of a chariot which is outside and we can touch, and then applying it to the person, and then going even to the more subtle understanding of our own aggregates. That's how I've heard it explained.
Yeah, yeah. But it still doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, lots of things don't make sense to me. So it doesn't matter. One day. Yeah. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Good. Okay. Oh, but you know what's also real interesting is they say, as long as you have grasping at the inherent existence of phenomena, you cannot realize the selflessness of persons. Now, that makes you really confused. Because it's supposed to be easier to realize the selflessness of persons than of phenomena, but as long as you're grasping at self of phenomena, you can't realize the selflessness of persons. What Geshe Jampa said was that they're, holding the aggregates to be truly existent means having a manifest artificial conception of the aggregates, as inherently existent. So it's an acquired grasping at the aggregates, and it has to be manifest in your mind at that time. So if that is happening at that time, you can't realize the emptiness of the person, which makes sense, But it's not talking about as long as you have grasping of phenomena in your continuum in general, then you can't realize the selflessness of persons. Okay. Although I had a discussion, His Holiness laughed during this, but I told him that for me, understanding the selflessness of phenomena is much easier for me than of persons, because as a child, I grew up studying science and learning that phenomena consist of all these atoms and molecules, and everything's in these small parts, and they're all whirling around, and it looks like something solid, but most of it is space, and the electrons are being shared between atoms, and the whole thing is changing every moment. So for me, to see, well, maybe this thing doesn't exist as it appears, because it has causes, or it's impermanent, or whatever. That's more difficult than thinking about the person as being empty, because also in this culture, we grew up, or at least I grew up, in a family where the self was really important, and it was definitely reified, and you are to be an individual, and you are to succeed, and you are to be like this and this and this. Yeah. Yeah. So it was a different sense of self than, let's say, you would have in a Tibetan society. And also in Tibet, you wouldn't grow up knowing science and being able to kind of look at that and think, oh, actually, it's mostly a bunch of space there, with just some atoms and molecules, gazillion of them there. So anyway, he laughed.
I asked this question when I was in India 2 different times. The first time he kind of blew it off, but the second time was a different geshe. What he said was that it's also really important to realize the selflessness of persons first, because if you realize selflessness of phenomena first, your arrogance, the danger of your arrogance being huge, would completely undermine everything, that you would be grasping then so much, having realized. So I thought it was a really interesting way of thinking about it.
Wow.
That the danger of having the arrogance of realizing the selflessness of phenomena would thwart your continued practice of being able to realize the selflessness of persons. Interesting.
Interesting. Huh. I never heard that. But then, if you really of course, this is an inferential understanding. It's not an actual one. Yeah. But if they say even with an inferential one, if you have an actual inferential one, you should be able to just change objects, and it works the same. Okay, now I brought these things here, but I didn't get to that part of the teaching yet. So we're going to have to wait till next week or whenever I found they're old pictures. I found them today cleaning something out, but they actually apply to something in here. Okay, so we're stopping right there. And then we'll take up next week, because I have a note that says, please leave time at the end of the teaching. Something arrived today that needs to be shared while we are still online.
This is the note that came in the box. You need to start with the note.
Okay, so it says, a gift for you. We wish you all the best with the winter retreat. Here are some duckies in case anyone needs to manipulate their outer circumstances. Enjoy.
Oh my goodness!
Oh! Look, duckies with sunglasses. Look. So this is from Cindy Sabido and Jonathan Blaze.